Thank you everyone for joining us in Ortelius Microservices Visionary event. And today we're going to talk about the pitfalls monolithic practice in a microservice architecture. And today I'm guest Saim Safdar and I'm joined by Sergio Canales. So let me introduce myself a bit for our audience. I am currently a DevOps engineer at Zigron, and also I'm a contributor to the Linkerd community, and past to the Linkerd, I've spent a lot of time in service Meshery open source layer 5 community. They have a tool called Meshery. And right now I am spend most of my time open free time with my Ortelius colleagues and Ortelius community. I found this community very helpful in terms of sharing knowledge, in terms of gathering information about microservices, Kubernetes, container, and these kind of stuff. And that's a bit about me. And why not, sir, you can introduce yourself a bit to our audience, where you are and what you currently do right now.
Thank you, Saim. Well, I'm currently working at Red Hat. I'm a senior consultant. I'm living like most part of my career on global professional services. These last years, pretty much doing a lot of migration to the cloud. So, yeah, usually I'm there with the customers when they are moving from traditional hosts, right, and right now to the hybrid cloud. So um, I'm pretty much doing in the field and helping customers to move up. I'm mute, right?
I think the first question everybody had talked to some question and answering sessions and some these kind of event. The first question I usually see people like to do, how do you transition yourself to the microservices world, and what your currently company is doing in these microservices setup, and what are the practices that you want to adopt? Can you share with us?
Well, usually um, you start a discussion trying not go directly of what they have to do, because there is super common that companies want to jump up to the microservice at once. So we start talking that is a process. There is the company need capabilities, maturity. There is a path to step in. So usually you start seeing what they are doing. Usually when you want to get some benefit from microservices, you have to think what they are solving. So usually you start improving the company. Informally, you are doing like a transformation to microservices, but you start improving, because in other cases you already have a customer that is maybe trying with some Spring Boot container and stuff like that, and you really see that they miss some important things. So there is a lot of gaps, maybe, and technical debt that if you don't solve or start working from the beginning can be a little harder. So the best practices is usually progress the company to improve his process and modernize his technology, and for the more important thing, like the people get new knowledge, new ways to work, new objectives. I don't know. So that is at least the fundamental thing we try to study.
And also, I think the natural question, okay, people came up their mind, if they have already a monolithic setup is built in, how do you translate that monolithic architectures to the microservices setup, and what the translation is going to be, and what are the strategies that are going to be adopted if they are moving to the microservices architecture?
Well, there is some patterns on the market. Usually, people are going to propose like a strangle monolithic, right? Taking some part of this big monolithic and isolated some functionalities. But the real thing is it depends. When you are on this situation, it's not only like transforming your implementations. There is a lot of time, how much training my people's going to need, how deprecated is maybe the technology, maybe it's too old, it's a legacy one. And at the end, there is a lot of money talks too. So there is some point where usually you cannot do like a big bang, we say, like you cannot just start over again in microservices. So you're going to try to have this monolith working, implementing some new stuff. And there is a lot of opportunities to start fresh. So there is a lot of people that maybe they have a huge Java monolithic and are going to try to a little implementation about, I don't know, REST services with Python or maybe other technologies that are more uh, have better performance, or maybe other benefits. But usually you're going to work in a dual mode, and the transition usually is you're still using your monolithic and you're going to point out to your new functionalities that are the same as monolithic, but this duality sending a little requests progressively is going to be a safe way to do it. And in another case, you're not going to have the money, for example, for putting a Kubernetes cluster and also having your big monolithic that need a big host, right? And a few data sensors to work. And at that point, probably you're going to need re-architecture and have like a new opportunity to replace faster and maybe refresh your model of what you're offering. So there is a lot of things you can do over that. But so you can go in resume, you can go in dual mode, in a single mode, or you can just start from scratch. So you have to do a little deep business scenario analytic for that. But just don't try to jump off microservice at once.
Yes, what I understand from the conversation is that when have already a monolithic setup is built in, you have to start thinking about what are the tools and technologies and the practices that people already have in their setups, and talk to the other community members what are their companies is going to set up in their setups. So try to having a conversation between each other is going to be very moving forward, and you have to build that as layer by layer approach. First, to think about it, architect in a way that you can distribute your system in a many other places, rather than just sitting in a one residing giant monolithic have a bigger box and everything contained in it. And you have to learn the complexity. And now you're removing the complexity and moving to the microservices landscape. And I have this topic of another question that I see that pop up everywhere, everyone in their mind, that in the monolithic architecture, we have some kind of separation of concerns between the business layer and the logic layer, the presentation layer. And now when we move to the microservices architecture, these are the different separate boxes. So how do we implement some kind of domain-driven design patterns and other business-oriented patterns? And what do they have these kind of pattern exist in the microservices landscape? And if you don't have, what we're gonna do in this way, in that way?
Okay, so on that topic, I'm going to go really light because domain driven design is a really large conversation. But I have to say that when you start like doing these little chunks of logic and separate like everything, usually you're going to, or the normal thing I can see is you're going to take like technical decision. Like you're going to take some layers, some packages, and usually the thing at the end you have a lot of technical part, but when you need to uh, put that on the perspective business view, it's going to be hard because probably these little chunks are not so not make sense when your business, I don't know, is having like a huge sales day at the end of the month, and you really don't know what part of that business are the critical one because you just chunk on technical part, but the business value is not clearly represented on anyone of everyone. So I think at the end today we are realizing we need a lot of more of domain-driven design. So just have a good balance about how technically I can separate this, but how I can still see in a domain. Because as you say, if you have a lot of boxes, and somebody asks you what I have to take care about, what is the most important part, what I have to need in high availability, what I need to grow to another cloud, another instance, it's going to be really hard to know. And usually observability is at the end, so you're not going to have that from the beginning. So a really interesting question. But yeah, it is hard. So the recommendation at this point is, yeah, try to don't miss the domain or the grouping these boxes in a logical business way.
And also, I think the next question is that people would like to know that the microservices is just for the containers or some else part of it, or microservices come up with the container, some other technologies we can build microservices in it. But I think the hot topic of microservices, and that's today's everyone, they're talking about the container and the orchestration technologies. So people would like to know if they don't have leverage of containers and orchestrations to know, they can build microservices, or what are their pros and cons of these kind of things?
Well, the discussion about microservices is is super deep. But one thing I'm sure that is a microservice definition is not a technical definition by itself. Is a way to work, because I when I explain stuff, I really go to the problem. Okay, so microservices born from the problem where you are really coupled, teams are really coupled, and functionality was really coupled to uh, to introduce change. You're going to take one line of some code, and probably you're going to make a lot of troubles for a lot of things. And after that, if you resolve that and everyone integrate that code, you're going to have a lot of problem deploying that. So that is like what we are trying to solve with microservices. So when uh, some company want to start using microservices, the last thing is going to happen is decide what Docker implementation is going to be, what orchestration is going to be. So it starts from seeing your process and seeing your pains and seeing if that pains, the top pains are those ones that are microservice design pattern, however you can want to call it, is going to solve. So I really like the definition from microservice that is giving you freedom. I really like that because I started as a developer. I start after like an engineer, system administration, CI/CD, DevOps, whatever you want to call it. But the program are the same. So it's really nice when teams have freedom, and when teams have freedom, they have speed, and there is a lot more innovation, a lot more trying new stuff without concern that somebody is going to complain. So yeah, I will like to put a point to that when we are talking to microservices, and forget that there is a technical constraint about that. You totally can do a microservice without container. At some point that is going. If you're like sending or delivering stuff in a really independent way, you're doing like microservices. So yeah, it's you it's not the only way to use microservices.
Yes, I think the shorter answer to this is not the only way to do the microservices thing. But I think the long answer to this is going to be because the whole ecosystem and the communities are moving in that way. If you're not container and container technologies, orchestration tools, there you have so many people to help you out if you find yourself or troubleshoot some kind of difficulties. So I think rather than going an isolated land where nobody here to help you, join the community, join the person, do the right thing with that technology where you can join the so many community members help you out in these kind of scenarios. And now moving to the pitfalls and these kind of topics, I think the first question that is really harder to understand right now, what are the responsibilities of my team? Let's say I have a microservices or we have tons of microservices. What are the upper responsibilities of my dev team? And what are the responsibilities of my ops team? What the DevOps going to be doing, these microservices architecture? What are the roles and responsibilities of SRA team if they have that kind of role? So can you elaborate on this topic of what the sheer responsibilities in a team that what microservices have?
Okay, so the responsibility I'm going to be, I will try to be more graphic on this. So microservices, another nice thing they have, I'm going to start from the beginning, like how we do this usually. So like the more traditional architectures are way to work were in layers. So we work like in horizontal um, a logical distribution about technical stuff and even process. So usually you're going, the teams, you have one team on the maybe virtualization or on operating system, middleware, apps, balancing, networking, and stuff like that. So if you see, you're doing layers, layers. Microservices change the responsibilities in a vertical cut. So you're trying to deliver fast functionality because for anything works, you need from the hardware until your final customer. So it's a vertical cut. So in that point, the team needs to know a little about all the layers. So the responsibilities change drastically. Your develop team is not going to have this freedom I already talked about. Microservices is don't have capabilities to sustain all the integration, all the layers. So I think it's going to be impossible that like a developer team knows every layer, but we need to extend a little the responsibility. So one thing that the reason because we have a good result using containers is not because itself is a good technology. It's because let the developer have a extended responsibility about the software and the binaries, libraries, the environment, and a little piece of the operating system and a little piece of the network and storage. So we are like putting some little extended role and responsibilities that increase the capabilities about this team. So, and that point is the same from the infrastructure guy. So they usually are not going to know anything about the application itself, but this container still is a operating system. It's still going to have a file system. It's still going to have binaries. So it's like a common language for both. So I think if I can do explain in a more simple way, my teams increase their responsibility in a real and a specific way that mix with the responsibilities of the next team. So we try to don't have it like these silos, like there is a gap in each team. So we have like an extended responsibility and that cross with some part of the responsibility of the next team in the next layers. So it's a little less clear that in the traditional way to work, but it has better results. So if I'm a developer and I know that, I don't for say something, Docker use some kind of local calls to the local IPs and stuff like that, probably it's going to be more easy to work with my infrastructure team and solve any connection issue, for example.
Yes, definitely. I think if we're moving in a way that conversation is, that's the point we try to drive home. Let's say we're using a microservices as a container-based technology. So the containers, we have a developer as a code constructor. They are constructing the Docker or container images that we call. So that they did have, the developer has this kind of ability to build the image in a way that is not vulnerable to some kind of other activities. So can somebody jump into the malicious container and run a script out of it. So the developer have this concrete ability to run the application in in an image stack, so they can distribute it to the dev team, to the testing team, to the prod team. They're working in a consistent way. So that's, I think, the develop is a responsibility of the developer, and that the operator has this ability to set up some container technologies. So let's say if the container goes down, so they have some kind of orchestration technology. So when the containers or these kind of services are not connecting with each other, say with the health probe and these kind of setting that available for them, so they can move us kind of some orchestration technology or cluster platform that we have to build to write up. And also, I think the next question on the topic of the pitfalls and these kind of, we start reflecting from the monolithic architecture to the microservices architecture. So we used to see the distributed monolith that people like to call it. So it's kind of a microservices architecture, but the microservice itself is a monolith. So that, I think, a misconception with a lot of people right now, a beginner who are moving to this microservice architecture, right, as there's a distributed monolith. Can you elaborate in this point what the distributed monolith and why we want to avoid it, and what is the originator of that service or the distributed monoliths?
Well, yeah, I think we do a little introduction of this, and this pitfall in particular is again when the decision is driving about the in the technical side. So if you if we say that we want to modernize our applications, and the solution is running the same application and on a container. As we say, microservice is not a technical thing. So if we put anything in a container, but we don't solve the problem, we're still having the same. So usually companies are going to drive the technical part. So I'm moving everything I already have to the cloud, to a Kubernetes, to a Docker, but still it's pretty much the same, and I'm having the same problem. So if you want to like have a lies detector for having, if I have a monolithic microservices, it's easy. If you are having the same pain points, you're having pretty much the same monolithic, even if in container or even if it's distributed. And I always mention this an experience with a customer. It wasn't just one, but I can say that one in particular. I get a little late on the project, so we were checking how the platform we're using was a Kubernetes platform. Um, so I see like in the all it was a floor, a complete floor from admins and developers. And I remember that I have a little, a few minutes. So one developer asked me something about the deployment. Um, when he start tell me what happened, they say, yeah, I need to ask you a few things because today my app fails. Pretty much all the platform fails. I have like one microservice, the Spring Boot microservices, right? Um, and this microservice fails, and then like in a cascade, like other 15 microservices fail. So the first thing I asked was why he called them microservices to a distributed monolithic that is clearly coupled. If one part is failing and everything is failing at the end, it's a monolithic. So yeah, I remember that was like the best situation ever to tell to other customers, because it's that we are monolithic is about coupling. If you have like really hard coupling things between containers, it is still a monolithic. Um, Yesterday was too much easier because you have like a war archive or something that you know that was just one package with everything. So it was like pretty visual. It was like a piece of software that you know that everything was over there. But today we have like a kind of mask for this monolithic that you cannot see it because there is an multiple repositories and different platforms distributed in different data centers maybe, so are more hard to detect because it's not so obvious. But I recommend you try to shut down one simple microservice on your architecture, and uh, and if that microservice doesn't affect any other microservice, good. You're in a good shape. But is that is not happening? Yeah, you are having still a a monolithic, and it's not something related than hey, I'm cool because I'm doing microservice or not. It's because if you have this coupling, always you want to like scale, independent freedom, improve time to market and stuff like that, you're going to need to replicate everything. So if you have a Kubernetes cluster with 15 microservices and then you want to scale and need to put at the other side another cluster with the whole 15 microservices at the end, in perspective, you're having like in traditional one host with a big application services with application server with everything, and the other side pretty much the same. So it's a monolithic. It's a relation. It's a direct relation. So today that is really common, and not because we are lacking just of architecture. It's because I think there is a commercial way to sell this. Usually, you are going to see a lot of people saying, hey, I have like, I can drive you to the cloud with a really less effort. Um, don't try to do that because going to the cloud, it really requires a long way and a lot of work. When you do less work at the beginning, you are just having a lot of more issues at the end, and you're not able to take advantage about all the capabilities in the cloud. For example, a really good example is, hey, let's go and do lift and shift. Lift and shift is, yeah, is less expensive, is quick, you can move, but at the end, the only real benefit is that you are not working in a traditional host, or maybe the whole thing put it on in another host, another container, or another cloud is going to be easy, but you're not taking advantage of anything. So take care about the concern about the investment you're going to do, because if you want the real benefits, you need to do it's a long way. It's a long way. It's not it's a there is not easy path to re-implement or change your monolithic way to work into a microservice distributed architecture.
I think we have very few minutes left right now, but I think the point, the driving home for our today's talk is that we started from the containers technologies and moving to the microservices architecture. From the monolithic, we have a translation layer to the microservice, but the end up with doing a have a microservices that end up having a microservice in its monolithic architecture itself. So it's going to be harder to explain what the right set of parameters for me, if in order to, if I testify that I am following suit the microservice architecture in a best possible way. And we have to set some kind of service discovery mechanism, because we have talking with one microservice can talk to other microservices, and you have to take the latency time between these microservices, how much time it takes to travel from one microservices to the another microservices, and they have to discover each other. That's the whole point of microservices. If they don't discover each other, these different chunks of boxes, then I think it's don't do point of moving these architectures to this. So I think there is service discovery, some roles and responsibilities, and some also the setup of these practices and principles of microservices. I think this is the future of microservices right now moving forward. And also, if I let you go, Sergio, can you introduce what the our community is helping people if they want to adopt the microservices kind of architecture, and what are our goals of in this 2021 in if we in the microservices journey with people of making the journey less scary and more exciting if they're adopting the microservices architecture.
Well, we are trying to support a lot of these pitfalls and problems we already told. So one of the most important thing we are trying to do is has a more balanced way to take decisions. So we want to have you the newest technologies, the innovation tools that are in the market, but in a way that your business can take advantage from that. So if you want to drive some decisions, we want to to have a more logical and business view. So we don't want to see just boxes, how we say. We want to put in place a solution that lets you see how is your business how is your business working. Uh, because usually you're going to have a really weird name about some microservices. So we are working a lot of in what is an app, what is a domain, what I am delivering here. What is the value I'm updating on this future. So a more like comprehensive way to say it. So in this community with the reptilians, we have I think a really good opportunity to have a different way to see it, the observability with a more business labor over that. So can be more easy to work in a collaborative way. Because microservices, I have another definition for microservices. Microservices is a lot of collaboration. If you're done doing much collaboration, you're not going to be able to use microservices because we already say that there is more people like talking with each other to have the best solution. So the first thing is less technical stuff, more business in place, more observability about what we are doing, and more freedom we are supporting to do new ways to deploy, new ways to grouping these much microservices that maybe you are having, and being more easy. At the end, we're trying to embrace complexity to you can take care about what is important, about a new release, about a new launch, about a new feature, about a new opportunity for your business to grow, to capture more customer, and that's in a really in a platform, in a toolbox. We are talking about this toolbox that need to grow and needs to be more consistent. We need to stop like taking tools just because of the technical benefits. We are trying to enrich that to the business benefits.
Yes, thank you very much, Sergio, for today joining us. I think that's all for time that we have for today's talk. I think hopefully, guys, will learn from this. The microservices is a kind of a research-oriented topic right now for the many companies they are moving forward. But luckily, we have a lot of tools, a lot of open source communities, a lot of contribution from open source communities, and luckily we have a guy like Sergio Canales, and there are so many other Ortelius communities here for you to help you out if you want to leverage microservices oriented architecture. I think from the last few words, I think you try to go for the Ortelius.io website and try to find and go to the guidelines section and try to and jump into the Discord channel and start conversating with people around this discussion on how we deploy microservice architecture in their current setup. I think having a starting initial conversation with us might be help you in moving forward. And I think is having a very good community out of it in open source project is going to be very helpful for that. And if you have some kind of cool ideas on how you can help us or help you contribute to these open source projects, do let us know. We are happy to have you here in our Discord channel and open source community. And go to the Rotarius.io and look for the deploy hub, our project as well. And hope to see you join you in future our events as well. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a great day, everyone.